Long before ibuprofen became a household name, people still woke up with stiff knees, bad backs, pounding temples, toothaches, sore muscles, and menstrual cramps. So households relied on a very different pain kit: heat, leaves, bark, oils, spices, and a few hands-on methods that cost almost nothing. What's surprising is how many of those old ideas still show up in modern human studies. One kitchen spice was tested head-to-head with ibuprofen for menstrual pain. A compound from cloves is still sold today, specifically for temporary toothache relief. And number one belongs to the same salicylate story that eventually gave us aspirin. We're counting these down by practical usefulness, human evidence, and historical staying power. And we'll start with a remedy so simple that most of us no longer think of it as a remedy at all. Number 15 is heat. A hot water pouch doesn't look very impressive beside a modern medicine cabinet, but heat is one of the oldest pain relief tools we have. For menstrual cramping especially, the idea is wonderfully simple. You apply steady, comfortable warmth over the lower abdomen and let the heat do the work. And this is one old practice that has been studied far beyond the anecdotal level. A 2026 review pulled together 57 randomized trials involving more than 5,300 women. Overall, heat therapy reduced pain from primary menstrual cramps. In comparison with anti-inflammatory pain medicines, the researchers found heat alone could provide comparable pain relief in some of the analyses. That makes the practical version almost laughably uncomplicated. Use a wrapped hot water bottle, reusable heat pack, or heating pad at a comfortable temperature over the lower abdomen. You're looking for soothing warmth, not enough heat to redden or burn the skin. There's no herb to order here or a supplement cabinet to build, just heat. And that simplicity is going to become a pattern in this list, because the next remedy requires nothing more exotic than something sitting beside the pepper shaker. Number 14 is warm salt water. If your throat was raw and swallowing hurt, one of the most ordinary household responses was warm salt water. And this one never completely disappeared. Even today, Mayo Clinic recommends a remarkably familiar preparation for soothing a sore throat. Dissolve about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of table salt in 4 to 8 ounces of warm water. Gargle it and spit it out. That is essentially the whole recipe. No special salt is necessary. It doesn't need to be pink, mineral-rich, imported, or expensive. Warm water, ordinary table salt, gargle, and spit. Older adults have also reported saltwater gargles among the home remedies passed through families for sore throats and mouth discomfort. So this isn't something invented by the modern wellness world and retroactively given a traditional story. It really did belong to household care. And notice what we're doing here. We aren't pretending every old remedy was a replacement for every kind of painkiller. These remedies were specific: warmth for cramping, salt water for an irritated throat. And number 13 gets much more interesting, because this one looks like an ordinary cooking ingredient until you see what happened when researchers put it up against a modern pain gel. Number 13 is sesame oil. Sesame oil has a much older life than the bottle you may keep beside your soy sauce. It has been used topically for joint discomfort in several traditional medical systems, including Persian medicine. Then researchers decided to test that old practice. In a randomized clinical trial involving 104 people with knee osteoarthritis, one group applied topical sesame oil and another used diclofenac gel. Both were applied 3 times a day for 4 weeks. On several important measures, including the WOMAC pain score, an 8-meter walking test, knee flexion, and the amount of additional analgesic medication used, sesame oil met the study's standard for non-inferiority to diclofenac. There's also a placebo-controlled trial involving people with traumatic arm or leg injuries, where topical sesame oil was associated with lower pain severity and tenderness. The practical version is wonderfully old-fashioned. A small amount of plain sesame oil is massaged over the uncomfortable area. In the knee study, it was done 3 times daily. Obviously, anyone with a sesame allergy should leave this one alone. But for everyone else, this is a good example of something our grandparents might have recognised immediately. Sometimes the oil wasn't just there to cook with. And the next remedy is even stranger, because it comes from the vegetable drawer. Number 12 is the cabbage leaf wrap. Yes, cabbage. This remedy sounds exactly like the kind of thing someone might dismiss as an old wives' tale, except cabbage leaf wraps have a documented history in European folk medicine, with modern reviews tracing the practice as far back as Roman use, and we have actual human trials. In one randomised study, 81 people with knee osteoarthritis were assigned to cabbage leaf wraps, topical diclofenac gel, or usual care. The cabbage group used the leaves every day for at least 2 hours. After 4 weeks, they reported significantly less pain than the usual care group, while the difference between the cabbage group and the diclofenac gel group was not statistically significant. Another clinical trial gives us a surprisingly precise way to prepare them. Researchers used ordinary white cabbage. The hard central stem was removed, the leaves were washed and dried, chilled in the refrigerator, then gently bruised with a rolling pin before being wrapped around the knee. In that study, the leaves stayed on for about an hour each day. So if you want the practical household version, that's the one I'd remember. Clean it, chill it, bruise it by rolling the leaves, wrap it. No elaborate cabbage paste, no blender, and no secret ingredient, just the leaf. And from here, we move from something you wrap around the body to something people have been doing with their own hands for thousands of years. Number 11 is self-massage. Before there were massage guns, vibrating chairs, heated rollers, and a gadget for every sore muscle, there were hands. Massage is an ancient practice, and medical literature describes manual massage as a long-established method used for pain, muscle spasm, swelling, and restricted movement. But the useful part for us is that researchers have also tested a version people could actually do themselves. In a randomized trial of adults with knee osteoarthritis, participants performed a 20-minute quadriceps self-massage twice a week. The routine used gliding strokes over the thigh muscles, tapping, and short friction strokes around the tendon attachments near the knee. Compared with the control group, the self-massage group improved on measures of knee pain, stiffness, and physical function. And notice where they focused. Not aggressive pressure directly into the knee joint, mostly the large quadriceps muscles above it. That's easy to adapt at home. Gentle gliding and kneading over the thigh, working gradually rather than attacking the most painful spot, like many people probably think to do. 20 minutes sounds substantial, but twice a week is hardly an impossible routine. And if you grew up in a house where someone rubbed aching shoulders, hands, feet, or knees at the end of the day, you were watching a very old pain remedy in action. Number 10 changes senses completely. This one works through smell. Number 10 is lavender. Lavender is so closely associated with relaxation now that its older medicinal history is easy to overlook. Historical reviews trace lavender use back through antiquity, and it has long appeared in medicinal and hygienic traditions. But the reason it earns a place on a pain list is headache. In a placebo-controlled clinical trial involving 47 people with migraine, participants inhaled lavender essential oil for 15 minutes during headache attacks. The lavender group experienced a significantly greater reduction in headache severity than the placebo group, and a larger proportion of their recorded attacks responded partially or completely. The easy home version is aromatherapy, not swallowing essential oil. Use a properly labelled lavender aromatherapy product in a diffuser or inhalation method according to its directions, and give yourself about 15 quiet minutes. This is also a good reminder that traditional pain care wasn't always about swallowing something. Sometimes it was temperature, sometimes touch, sometimes aroma, and sometimes it was a plant so strange looking that its name sounds like something from folklore. So far, we've used heat, salt, cooking oil, cabbage, our own hands, and lavender. But from this point forward, the chemistry becomes much more interesting. Several of the plants coming up contain compounds that act on pathways modern pain medicine still pays attention to, and one of them has been used for pain in southern Africa for generations. Number 9 is Devil's Claw. The name sounds dramatic, doesn't it? Devil's Claw grows in the Kalahari region of southern Africa, where ethnobotanical research documents its traditional use for ailments that included arthritis and pain. The part generally used medicinally is the root. One randomized double-blind trial followed 197 people experiencing an exacerbation of chronic low back pain. Researchers tested standardized devil's claw extracts against placebo for 4 weeks. By the final week, more participants receiving the higher standardized extract were pain-free without the permitted rescue medication than in the placebo group. The European Medicines Agency also recognizes devil's claw root preparations for the relief of minor joint pain on the basis of long-standing use. For a modern household, I would not eyeball dried root and guess at a medicinal tea. Look for an adult devil's claw product that clearly identifies the extract or harpagicide content and follow that product's directions. That's a recurring lesson with herbs. Traditional doesn't mean imprecise. Herbs are very powerful and should be used safely. Number 8 may already be sitting in the natural product section of your local pharmacy. Number 8 is Arnica Gel. Arnica has been used topically for bruising, sprains, and sore muscles for generations. The European Medicines Agency recognizes topical Arnica preparations for bruises, sprains, and localized muscle pain based on their long-standing use. But one particular trial makes this entry difficult to ignore. Researchers recruited 204 people with osteoarthritis of the hands and compared a proprietary Arnica gel with a 5% ibuprofen gel for 21 days. At the end of the study, the two groups showed no significant difference in improvement in hand pain or function. The investigators concluded that this particular Arnica preparation was not inferior to the ibuprofen gel for hand osteoarthritis. That does not mean every jar labelled Arnica is identical. What it does give us is a very practical traditional option with a recognisable modern form. For home use, choose a properly labelled topical Arnica gel or preparation, follow the package directions, and keep it on intact skin. And this is exactly the sort of practical traditional swap our free natural living starter kit is built around. Simple household knowledge you can actually use without turning your kitchen into a laboratory. I've linked it below and I'll tell you more about it near the end. Number 7 belongs in a completely different part of the house, probably beside your tea. Number 7 is peppermint oil. If you've ever rubbed something minty on your skin and felt that sudden wave of cold, you already know peppermint can change what the nerves at the surface are feeling. Peppermint oil stimulates cold-sensitive nerves in the skin, which is part of the reason topical preparations have been used for headache relief. The European Medicines Agency recognizes preparations rubbed onto the forehead and temples for mild headaches. And there's a particularly useful human trial behind this one. Researchers studied 164 tension headache attacks in 41 adults. A 10% peppermint oil preparation in ethanol was spread over the forehead and temples and repeated after 15 and 30 minutes. Headache intensity dropped significantly. The study also included acetaminophen, and researchers found no significant difference in efficacy between the peppermint preparation and 1,000 milligrams of acetaminophen in that specific trial. That makes this one very easy to remember. For a tension-type headache, look for a properly diluted topical peppermint preparation intended for headache use and apply it according to the label around the forehead and temples, keeping it well away from the eyes. And if peppermint feels cold, number 6 is the exact opposite. It burns on purpose. Number 6 is capsaicin. Capsaicin is the compound that makes chili peppers hot. Put it in your mouth and your brain gets the message, fire. Put it into a properly formulated topical pain product repeatedly and something more interesting happens. Capsaicin stimulates a pain-sensing receptor called TRPV1. With continued exposure, those receptors become desensitized, which is why capsaicin and capsaicin ended up in topical creams and medicated plasters for pain. This is not a fringe use. The European Medicines Agency recognizes capsaicin preparations for muscle pain, such as low back pain. There's one practical rule here that matters. Do not make this one by smearing kitchen cayenne paste onto yourself. Use a commercially prepared capsaicin cream or capsaicin plaster made for topical pain relief. Follow the label, use it only on intact skin, and expect some warmth or burning sensation. The pepper that once lived in the kitchen as food became a standardized pain cream. And number 5 made a remarkably similar journey from forest plant to pharmacy shelf. Number 5 is Wintergreen Liniment. If you remember the smell of an old-fashioned liniment, there's a good chance wintergreen was part of it. Wintergreen and sweet birch contain methyl salicylate, a salicylate compound that is still used today in topical products for muscle and joint pain, backaches, arthritis, strains, sprains, and bruises. The Smithsonian's National Museum of American History even holds pharmaceutical specimens from the 1920s showing wintergreen and sweet birch oils as sources of methyl salicylate used in salicylate preparations. What changed was not the ingredient so much as the way we use it. Concentrated wintergreen oil should not be rubbed straight onto the skin. It is extremely rich in methyl salicylate, and too much can be absorbed through the skin. Traditional liniments diluted wintergreen into a larger preparation, and modern products do essentially the same thing in measured concentrations. So if you want to use wintergreen today, the simplest approach is a properly formulated wintergreen or methyl salicylate liniment made for topical pain relief, rather than applying concentrated essential oil directly. And because methyl salicylate belongs to the salicylate family, people who are allergic to aspirin, take blood thinners, have a history of stomach bleeding, or regularly use other NSAIDs should check the label carefully or ask a pharmacist first. These products also should not be used with a heating pad because heat can increase absorption. So wintergreen never really disappeared. We standardized it. And number 4 followed a very similar path. Number 4 is Comfrey Ointment. Comfrey has one of the longest histories in this countdown. For centuries, it was used externally for painful muscles, joints, sprains, bruises, and injuries. And it's one of those old remedies that never completely disappeared. Natural health educator Barbara O'Neill still talks about Comfrey when discussing the plants and preparations people once kept in the household medicine cabinet. But for pain, there's a very specific form worth knowing today: topical comfrey root extract. In one randomized, double-blind study of 120 people with acute upper or lower back pain, participants applied a standardized comfrey root ointment 3 times a day for 5 days. The Comfrey group experienced a much greater reduction in pain with movement than the placebo group. Another randomized trial involving 220 people with painful knee osteoarthritis also found significant improvement with a standardized comfrey root ointment compared with placebo. You can find comfrey ointments and creams made specifically for external use, and that's what I would choose over homemade comfrey tea. The reason is simple. Comfrey naturally contains compounds called pyrrolizidine alkaloids that can be harmful to the liver when swallowed. That's why modern comfrey preparations for pain are generally designed for topical use, where the herb has both its long traditional history and some of its strongest human research behind it. So this is one old remedy that didn't need to disappear. It just needed the right form. And now we reach the top 3. Number 3 is ginger. Ginger has been used for centuries across Chinese, Ayurvedic and other traditional systems for aches, cramps and joint or muscle pain. Today most of us know it simply as a kitchen ingredient, a knob beside the garlic, a spice in a jar, something steeped into tea when you don't feel well. But modern research gives it a strong place on this list. In one trial of 150 women with menstrual cramps, ginger powder was tested directly against ibuprofen and mefenamic acid. Women taking 250 milligrams 4 times a day for 3 days reported similar pain relief to both medications. A 2024 meta-analysis supported that finding, showing ginger significantly reduced menstrual pain compared with placebo and performed similarly to NSAIDs across the studies reviewed. The key is the form. The ibuprofen comparison used a measured dose of ginger powder, not just a cup of tea. So if you want something closer to the studied version, look for plain ginger powder or a clearly measured ginger product. That's number 3. Number 2 comes in a tiny brown bottle, and if you grew up with it, you may remember the smell before anything else. Number 2 is clove. Few things can take over your attention like a bad toothache. For centuries, cloves and clove oil were used for dental pain, largely because of eugenol, the main active compound in clove oil. And modern research gives this old remedy a strong case. In a 2006 dental study, clove gel was tested against 20% benzocaine gel and placebo in 73 adults. Both clove and benzocaine significantly reduced pain compared with placebo, and clove performed similarly to benzocaine. That's especially interesting because eugenol is still sold today in the United States as an over-the-counter toothache relief ingredient. For a cavity-related toothache, properly labelled eugenol products are typically applied with a tiny cotton pellet directly to the affected tooth for short-term relief. The important part is not to rub concentrated clove essential oil all over the gums because it can irritate soft tissue. So the practical modern version of this old remedy is simple. Use a properly labelled Eugenol toothache product exactly as directed and treat it as temporary relief while you arrange dental care. And that brings us to number 1, where one of the oldest plant remedies on this list connects directly to the history of aspirin. Number 1 is willow bark. Willow bark earns the top spot because it didn't just survive as an old remedy, it helped shape the history of modern pain medicine. Its use for pain and fever stretches back thousands of years, and by the 1700s, European physicians were formally documenting its effects. The key compound is salicin, which the body converts into salicylic acid. That same chemical family eventually led to the development of aspirin, and willow bark has more than history behind it. In a randomized, double-blind study of 210 people with chronic low back pain, participants took standardized willow bark extract for 4 weeks. In the higher dose group, 39% were pain-free without needing tramadol rescue medication, compared with just 6% in the placebo group. That's a pretty striking result. The European Medicines Agency also recognizes standardized willow bark extract for short-term lower back pain, along with traditional use for minor joint pain and headaches. So if you want to use willow bark today, I'd choose a properly labelled, standardized adult preparation rather than stripping bark from a tree and guessing at the strength of a homemade tea. This wasn't just a forgotten plant remedy, it became part of the story of modern pain relief itself. The old household pain kit was far more varied than most of us remember. It had heat for cramping, salt water for a raw throat, hands for aching muscles, cabbage leaves and sesame oil for sore knees, peppermint for tension headaches, and plants like ginger, clove, comfrey, and willow, whose stories eventually crossed into modern research and pharmacy shelves. You don't have to recreate a 19th century medicine cabinet to recover the useful part of that knowledge. Start with the remedies that fit your life. Use standardized products when concentration matters, and keep the simple things simple. Which one of these did your parents or grandparents actually use? Drop it in the comments below. And if you're trying to bring more of this practical knowledge back into your home, I put together a free natural living starter kit with simple swaps and traditional ideas you can begin using without overhauling your entire life. The link is in the description. Then watch 15 forgotten home remedies that predate modern medicine, because several of the household remedies in that video belong right beside the ones we covered today. This is Natural Living Library, where we recover the practical knowledge modern life left behind. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you in the next